Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream. Today, stalking in Japan has hit record highs. We look at the danger of obsession and how victims are fighting back. With me is May El Hassan, looking out for your live feedback as digital producer. I know, of course, there must be very rich conversation about this online. What are you seeing?
There's definitely a lot from our community, and that's because it's already become an internet issue. Main exposure has come from this change.org petition that has been put up. Stalker Zero and the Japanese culture of silence towards crimes against women. And of course, during the show, we have two women who are behind this campaign. And surprisingly, there's a very interesting supporter. Yoko Ono has tweeted about this. I replied to her asking her to elaborate. I'm still waiting on her response, but you don't have to be Yoko Ono to join the conversation. All you have to do is tweet us with hashtag AJStream.
And the conversation is always better when you participate, as May said, and there are lots of ways to do that. Check out our Google Plus page by going to the link below on your screen, and you too could be in the stream.
Hi, I'm York Tittle. I'm a writer-director at OIFI, and I'm in the stream.
Stalking has hit a record high in Japan for the second year in a row. 21,089 cases were on the books last year, and that's only the people willing to tell police they were in trouble. We're not just talking about creeping on the internet, we're talking about persistent, unwanted attention veering from disturbing to sometimes deadly. A spate of murders by suspected stalkers have made headlines, and now a former beauty queen who says she fled Japan to escape her aggressor is fighting back. Miss International 2012, Ikumi Yoshimatsu, is driving a petition to strengthen Japan's anti-stalking laws, and she has the support of the Prime Minister's wife. But is an online movement enough to change a culture where some say money and power are often louder than a cry for help? Well, joining us to discuss this in Hawaii, Ikumi Yoshimatsu, actress, activist, and founder of a Stalker Zero campaign. In Tokyo, Jake. Hello, thank you for being with us. In Tokyo, Jake Adelstein, an investigative journalist in Japan since 1993, and the person who broke Ikumi's story. Also in Tokyo, Emi Suzuki Harris, founder of Change.org Japan. And in New York, Joyce Gelb, professor of political science, Asian and women's studies at City University of New York. Welcome all of you to the stream. Ikumi, I want to start with you. I'm going to play a clip on my computer from your final speech at the 2012 Miss International pageant, in which you won the crown. I'd like our audience to have a look at this.
I believe that the success of winning a title is based on how many people you can inspire, how many communities you can help, how much change you can bring to the world. As women, we have endless potential. We can be anything we want to be. We can accomplish anything we choose to accomplish.
Ikumi, you spoke about bringing change to the world. So what change are you trying to make now?
I'm trying to change the world, of course. And in Japan and in many other countries, there is still culture of silence toward crimes against women. Intimidation, stalking, and harassment often lead to murder or forced suicide. So this has become an epidemic in Japan, where police and legal system have failed to protect lives of women. So I am changing this by speaking out and sharing my own personal story and what I've experienced. So now I am petitioning Prime Minister Abe to launch a task force to make emergency laws that will force the police and legal system to protect victims immediately.
Well, Ikumi, you mentioned that you're sharing your personal story. For our audience, what happened to you? What is your story?
Immediately after I became the first Japanese ever winning the world title for Miss International pageant, I was pressured to give my management rights to agency widely known to have ties to organized crime. So my refusal to do so lead to year-long campaign of stalking and intimidation against me and my family. So the police refused to protect me and even suggest something is wrong with me for refusing to join the agency. So the Miss International headquarters in Japan said they received phone calls from my tormentor and they were so afraid of what might happen that they asked me to play sick and not show up to pass my crown to my successor.
Did you show up?
That's my story.
Did you show up?
No, it's not. Still not.
Well, I have a quote here from the man you allege to be stalking you. This is in an article written by one of our guests, Jake, actually. And this is a quote on my screen. Jinichi Taniguchi says, "I'm no stalker. Her manager," referencing you, Matt Taylor, "owes me a large sum of money and I was merely trying to get paid back. Yes, I was at the television shooting on December 30th, but I never grabbed Miss Yoshimatsu and I didn't cause any trouble. I never hired private detectives to spy on her." So he says he was not spying. He says your manager owed him money. What is your response?
No matter what he said, his issue with my agent has nothing to do with me or nothing to do my family, of course, and nothing to do my business associates, and does not excuse any of his actions. And Jake knows all of it.
Can I interrupt here?
Jake, please do.
The tormentor there is quoted as saying, "I never hired any private detectives to spy on her," and his lawyer told me when I asked him, "Were you the one who hired the private detectives?" He said, "No, I couldn't have done it because he hired the detectives and he gave me the report with the photos of Ikumi's house and stuff, and the detectives were relatively discreet." Very recently in Japan, there have been judgments where the police have said that hiring someone to be your proxy and stalking someone is also stalking. So it doesn't look very good for him if this case is criminally prosecuted.
We have community weighing in with their own stories. I mean, I want to bring you in, but Jake, I also want to hear your stories of having stalkers in Japan. Mahnaz says that people victim blame and they think you're paranoid, they think you're seeking attention, they want to defriend you, they call you crazy. Eleanor says that her ex was mentally ill and stalked her. She thinks it's like OCD or an addiction. And Charles wants us to remember that anyone can be a stalking victim, just like anyone can be harassed, anyone can be assaulted, anyone can be murdered. So this is not just a case of a celebrity or a beauty queen, not to diminish anything you've said, Ikumi, but the issue has been that there are so many cases that have been reported in Japan. So Emmy, can you talk to us about that? And Jake, tell us about some of your stories afterwards.
Sure, absolutely. I just want to say, following up on some of those comments about, being told that you're crazy for saying something like that or speaking out. It is the cost for speaking out in Japanese culture is tremendously, tremendously high. There's a phrase that is often quoted called "deru kugi wa utareru," which means basically if you're a nail that sticks out, you will be hammered back in. And I think stalking victims up until now have faced that very strong cultural pressure to just shut up and be silent about it. Don't tell anybody. And then, ultimately many of them have committed suicide, just as Ikumi said. So the fact that Ikumi has stepped out and actually publicly named her tormentor, in a public forum, and then called for actually concrete steps to sort of make the situation better is really historic, and I think has been really inspiring for a lot of stalking victims, as you can see in the comments on her petition.
So can I just make a comment? This is Joyce.
Please, Joyce.
I want to say that this idea that nobody ever speaks out is, I think, a little bit overstated. There was first an issue with domestic violence, and gradually a lot more women came forward with regard to that, and similarly sexual harassment. But the fact is there have been something like 10,000 complaints about stalking. And so I think that many women are speaking out, and hopefully a program like this will inspire more to do so.
And Joyce, of course, you mentioned women, but it's not just women. Jake,
No.
I know that you told our producers that tonight, when you went to your home, there was an unwelcome visitor there. Tell us about that.
Well, I have two stalkers. One is an ex-journalist, and one is, I still consider her a friend, that she has some mental problems. Yeah, she showed up at my doorstep at about 1 a.m. and would not leave. After sending me a bunch of mails that were, my birthday's on the 28th, which is this week, and her birth mails were, my birthday wish for you is that you die on your birthday. Not exactly the kind of thing you like to receive in the mail.
Whoa.
And then she flew in from Canada just to come and be on my doorstep, and wouldn't let her in the house. And then she started yelling, and then, you know, I have neighbors, and it's Japan, so eventually the police, because I'm still under police protection here, showed up and wanted to know whether she was involved with organized crime. I said, no, she's not involved with organized crime. She's just off her meds. They talked to her. She left.
Did I hear you correctly, Jake, that you're under police protection already?
Yes, in 2008, I wrote an article about an organized crime boss that made him really angry, and was put under police protection. So they come around the house and check regularly, which is why it's, you know, it's kind of embarrassing to have the organized crime guy come to your house and check up on you, and you say, no, this person doesn't have anything to do with organized crime. She's just a little bit upset because she's not on her meds. I explained the situation to him, and he said, you know, we'll talk to her, and please call us if you have any more problems, because you're on our police protection list, and anything that happens to you is our problem. So, you know, in that sense, there.
Jake, you bring up a really good point. What exactly then is stalking? We have Brad who says, does creeping Facebook profiles count? Good idea to check your privacy settings. We have a video comment from Professor J. Reed Malloy, who is a forensic psychologist and one of the leading researchers in the US on stalking, and he breaks down the psychosis of stalking for us.
Stalkers tend to have a variety of mental states, ranging from individuals that are just very angry and trying to retaliate against somebody that's rejected them. We see that a lot in individuals that are stalking that have had a prior relationship with the victim. On the other hand, you will see individuals who are psychotic when they stalk.
We also have another tweet from Sarah that says, I think it could be problematic behavior. And then El-Hajj feels that stalking is a mental illness. So what is it? Is stalking a mental illness? Is it a criminal activity? Do you agree that there is some psychosis attached to it? I would love Joyce to jump in on this one.
Well, one thing is that about 60% of stalking cases are really done by members of the family or friends or somebody whom the victim knows. So if it's psychosis, it involves a relationship that has some psychosis in it. So I guess that I find, you know, a very interesting fact. You know, I think maybe the difficulty in ending abusive relationships, which is true everywhere, but especially in Japan sometimes, where, you know, people don't want to go public, they're afraid the family may be ashamed, they're afraid, you know, of calling too much attention to themselves. I think this you know, compounds the problem that exists.
You know, in some of the things that I'm reading online, and even in discussions, one of the things I notice is that many people equate this to something that happens after being in a relationship, something that happens between couples. This could be a case of domestic violence. Kumi, I want to go to you because I'd like to know whether or not the police classified this as stalking because it was not a case of romantic entanglement. Did that still count as stalking under the law in Japan?
Yes. In my case, I went to the police, but police said to me, in your case, your tormentor is not stalker. In Japan, in order for police and accept a complaint of stalking, there's much evidence that the perpetrator has expressed love for the victim, and the victim must be directly related, living with, or previously lived with the stalker. So the legal definition is so narrow, and that does not allow the legal system to use common sense. So obviously, there are many reasons stalker many target victims other than love. in such cases, the police will not do anything to protect or help the victims, like me.
Okay, Ikumi, you bring up a really interesting point. We're the police in this, and what is their role within the legal system? We have Tetsuya, who is a professor, an associate professor of international law at Akita University, and also a Wilson Center fellow, commenting on this.
Hello, I'm Tetsuya Toyoda of Akita International University. The Japanese law on the prohibition of acts of stalking, enacted in 2000, covers various acts of stalking, including the ones by emails after its revision in June 2013. The problem is not law, but its implementation. The Japanese police does not efficiently protect the victims from acts of stalking.
We also have a Facebook comment from Patricia that says victims of stalking need much more than tips or a piece of paper. They need trained volunteers and staff to work with them and the police to help document and record the stalking activity and hold stalkers accountable before damage occurs. Emmy, do you know much on this? Is this a case of implementation of the law? Are the police at fault?
I'm not an expert in that area, unfortunately, but when you read the comments on Ikumi's petition, I think you can sort of get the sense that when women go to the police with their issues around stalking, they're often not taken seriously. They're often dismissed. And there have been very, very famous cases over the past year where victims have ended up getting murdered because the police have, for example, mistakenly shared information, personal information like addresses, to the stalker, despite the fact that the police report had already happened. So you sort of can understand a little bit why victims would feel a little bit wary of sharing their information with the police now after so many cases where it's just ended very badly for the victim.
And Jake, actually,
yeah, so this is a good
I want to
point.
get Jake in here just really quickly because he shared with our producers ahead of time this graphic that I pulled up on my screen here, and this is explaining the complaint process. It's in Japanese, but I'm showing it for our audience. Jake, how complicated is this process?
It's almost like it's designed not to be effective. And I've heard detectives complain, like, I would much rather prosecute a stalker on making threats, coercing behavior, or unlawful entry rather than anything other than this stalking law because it's so hard to get done. So first you go to the police, then they try to decide whether it's unwanted harassment or whether it actually meets the criteria for being stalking, and then depending upon which criteria it meets, the chain of what happens next becomes set forth. And the conditions for recognizing stalking are very high. You have to meet one of 8 conditions, and which include things like they trail you, they wait for you at your home, they constantly monitor you, they yell at you and insult you in a loud voice.
What about if they send you emails? Because the law was changed last year, right?
Emails
Since
have recently been added.
2013, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but everybody's now using social networking sites
Right.
like Line or Twitter. I don't want to give any hints to Japan's psychopaths of what you should be doing to get around the laws, but actually
Appreciate that.
there have been huge numbers of people getting hundreds of odd mails and over social networking sites, and none of those count because they're not
Right.
stipulated in Japanese laws. I mean, it used to be that you had to fax people or send them letters to it to be considered a form of cyber harassment. So they've added emails. So what happens? The stalkers don't send emails. They use Facebook, Twitter, and Line, which is a very popular kind of Facebook-like application in Japan.
So we had a lot of community feedback on the culture of stalking possibly being perpetuated by anime and the media. And I want to jump to those. Trudy on Twitter says, in dramas and anime, the lead characters stalk love interests. If it's a cultural norm, pervasive stalking should be expected, right? And we even have a clip here from a popular anime series it's called A Chain of Stalkers. As you can see, there's a stalker after stalker following one person after the other. So my question to you, and trying very delicately not to get into the line of pathologizing Japanese culture, Is this something that has been perpetuated because of the prevalent theme of stalking in anime and manga? Emmy, can you answer that?
You know, I've actually never seen the chain of stalking anime. I will say though that when I sort of consume Japanese media here, one of the things that surprised me when I got back was the lack of positive role models for women, and sort of the power dynamics that play out where men do seem to have more control over women, just in normal narratives. So it doesn't surprise me that there are anime and manga that put women in that position, that could be sort of helping along in perpetuating this culture. It's certainly gotten a lot better than it was before, but I think we have a long way to go on that.
Well, in that long way to go, Joyce, I want to bring you in here because what is the solution to this? Is it going through the legal route? Is it Parliament? Or is it things like the petition that, Change.org, Emmy's organization, helped bring about this awareness? Where does that change come from?
Well, I think it comes from many sources. I think the legal is one. I guess I don't put so much faith in the support of Abe's wife, given his record on women in general, I would have to say. So, frankly, that wouldn't be an avenue I would look to, although it's nice that she has at least symbolically provided, her aid on this issue. So I think legal. I don't know the role that Parliament could play. I mean, Parliament did pass a significant law on domestic violence, and it has been strengthened a couple of times. So I think that's one route to go, and I think that combined activist women, clearly we have activist women on the stalking issue, some members of the Diet, the Parliament, and some sympathetic bureaucrats. So we do have some, paradigms for affecting change from a parliamentary perspective, and the courts are sometimes an ally of women, not always, but that takes money and time and advocacy, legal advocacy efforts. So I think, I think a multi-pronged effort would be the most appropriate,
right.
But it's a difficult road to follow.
Of course, and you mentioned the Prime Minister's wife, Ikumi. I know that you are working with the Prime Minister's wife. Tell us about that work.
Okay, I'm working with the First Lady, Mr. Abe, and this is the first time the high-profile women have publicly joined forces to voice outrage and to change the culture of silence toward crimes against women in Japan. Within days of introducing the Stalker Zero campaign, this became the #1 topic on most online forums, with millions of women sharing their personal stories online and also on my blog as well. So stalking victims in Japan for the first time feel like, things might really change and are very passionate and supportive.
We can also, Ikumi, I'm glad that you mentioned those personal stories. We can see some of those on the website, change.org, that you mentioned, Stalker Zero. Yes. That's the campaign. If you scroll to the bottom, there are lots of people who are sharing their comments and some of their stories for why this resonates with them. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. But don't go away. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. Now on the next show, is the pressure to succeed fueling South Korea's high suicide rate? We'll discuss the growing epidemic. And until then, we'll see you online. Take care. Welcome back to the Stream's online post show. We're discussing stalking in Japan and the effort to fight back. Now, Emmy, I want to pick up with you because we've been mentioning your campaign that's been on your page, change.org. It got 20,000 signatures at one point. Of course, it's more than that now, but 20,000 signatures in Japan. Is that significant? Does that indicate a groundswell of support for something that we hadn't previously seen?
Yeah, Ikumi's petition was the fastest growing petition when it was launched in January. I think it got 20,000 signatures within a couple days, which we launched the Japanese version of change.org just 18 months ago, and it was really record-breaking on that front. And I thought what was really amazing about it was not just the fact that people were signing, but the fact that people saw Ikumi's story and were willing to share their own personal stories in a public forum. Yes, I think people have been reporting the issues that they've been seeing to the police, but it has been in a private capacity. And I think the fact that people have been willing to step out publicly and put a comment on a petition that anybody in the world can see has been really galvanizing, and is helpful to have one place where you can see those stories come together.
So it's always an educational moment on the stream. We got a comment from Hani, who it was revealed to her, turns out stalkers are very adept at using social media tools. Seems like Foursquare is a stalker's dream. Why use it? I want to actually, I know, I don't use it myself personally. I'm kind of creeped out about it.
Very good point.
I want to bring the conversation into a bigger context of Japanese society. Once again, we have a comment from Roshika, who says that that they need to change the social constructs of masculinity, and she hashtags smash patriarchy. She continues, because of our patriarchal construct, expectation is that men be macho, strong, and not a victim. Women can only be victims with this mentality. So the question would be, is patriarchy a big problem in Japan? Is this the reason that so many cases are either ignored, or this has kind of been transformed into a weak woman's case? Jake, I know we've talked about your own personal experience. How's that written in other sort of structures in Japanese culture?
Well, look at it this way. The police force is 92% or 93% male. It's completely male-dominated society, and men are less sensitive to these issues than women. The gender gap rating for Japan is 103 out of 135 countries. So the paternal attitudes and the sort of chauvinistic and sexist attitudes of Japan make the problem be treated lightly. The police are doing their best, but...
Sorry, it looks like we lost Jake. Maybe we can get Joyce to chime in.
Well, I guess I'm not sure what I can add, but I think the fact that you have to go to the police and file your complaint is a hurdle. It's not like they come visit you. I think that's a major problem, as it is with regard to domestic violence. So I think that's one big issue. The fact that so many women, as you've indicated, have come out and been articulate about the issue, I think is very encouraging. But I do think that a multi-pronged effort has to be manifested because there are a lot of different ways to address the issue, through the courts, through the diet, even through the bureaucracy, and through the media and social media.
Joyce is giving us her prescriptions for how to address this. Appreciate that. We don't have much time left, but because I want to go to Japan, Emmy, your quick thoughts on a solution.
Gosh, a solution to the stalking problem overall.
In about two lines.
Would be,
is that a big? That's
sure.
a big task, but we think you can do it.
No, that's definitely a big task. Why don't we start with one big first step, which is I would love the Japanese mass media to actually report this story and actually go deeper when they talk about these stories. Usually these stalking stories are wrapped up to 30 or 60 seconds, and there's no sort of digging deeper into what we can do as a society to change things. And I think that's the conversation that we need to be having in households, in the parliament, as Joyce said. We're just scratching the surface, and it's not going deep enough.
Jake, now that we have you back, Ikumi, please.
Yeah, and also we need to create a restraining order like in the US with other countries, so whereby police will have the authority to grant restraining order requests immediately. That's what we need in Japan.
What's amazing is the police have the ability to grant a restraining order immediately and they have never used it.
Do you think there will come a time when that's not an issue, when it will be the first resort? Jake?
He's gone. But I will say that only one person has been arrested so far, for stalking. So I think given the magnitude of complaints that we've been discussing here, I think that gives us some indication of how far there is to go.
Thank you for that, Joyce. It is 4:24 in the morning in Japan, so we'll blame the time on the technical gremlins with Jake. But I want to end our conversation with Ikumi. Ikumi, you are in Hawaii now.
Yes.
Do you look forward to a time, do you have a time in mind when you think you will be able to go back to your home?
I hope so. But in Japan, it's very difficult to prove a case stalking. So even if you have a photography or voice recording or videotape that clearly shows act of intimidation or stalking. So, in my case, still the police didn't offer any protection for me and wouldn't even send a warning to my stalker. So I don't feel safe when I go back to Japan, even now.
And we hope that changes very soon. May, what's our community saying?
Our community is trying to jump in on a solution. Mahnaz says maybe case studies, investigative journalism, and people with lived experiences will show how big this topic is, and not just a short chat on Twitter.
Well, thank you for that. Thanks to our community for joining us. And of course, thanks to our guests for sharing their stories and their prescriptions for solutions. Ikumi Yoshimatsu, Jake Edelstein, Joyce Gelb, and Emmy Suzuki Harris. Now, on the next show, South Korea's dark side, why thousands of Koreans are turning to suicide. Until then, we'll see you online.